welcome everybody to today's group call. I'm so excited for you all to be here with our special guest, Heather Golden, the Director of Career Services at the Cleveland Institute of Art for a resume workshop. So for this event, we asked if you have your resume or some draft of your resume, it's great to have that on hand or pulled up in a tab. Not required though for today's event, but it's just a helpful thing if you do have it. We have a note stock that we like to use for these calls in the chat here. So if you're not already in there, please hop in that call and just mark you're here. And we're asking everyone to hyperlink your name so that we can create an opportunity for everyone to connect with each other on LinkedIn and continue these connections and our experiences as DFAers. So if you scroll down to page 2 after you check in, today's agenda includes some quick announcements, some Zoom norms I'm going to go over, and a quick round of introductions, which we'll do in the chat. Heather is going to then take it away with a presentation around resumes and the best practices when it comes to resume creation. We're going to go into our breakout groups and actually work together and create some resume bullet points with other people on the call. So we can then create a wonderful catalog and surplus, stockpile of really amazing resume points that we can all take from each other and adapt to our own needs as DFAers. So welcome everybody again for this group call. If you're able to have your Zoom faces available, if your web interface allows, we'd love to see everybody. We ask that you rename yourself, your first name, and then your studio or whatever organization you're from, Heather, so that we all know who's a part of what. To do that, you go to the 3 ellipses in the right-hand corner of your face, and then you can rename yourself, whichever studio you're a part of. So in best practice, I will also do that. Perfect, thank you. And then if you aren't presenting, we just ask that you mute. Perfect, Zoom best practices. And now for a quick round of introductions, I would love for everybody in the chat to introduce them. Just write, your name, pronouns, and the last time you used your resume. When was the last time you used your resume? I think. Or looked at your resume if you haven't used it for a while. Literally this week, what were you using it for?
I actually had to update it within a day because I saw there was an internship and it was due the night that I saw it. And I just real quick whipped that up.
Amazing. Yes. There's always opportunities out there that you're keeping on your radar and you want to make sure you have that document ready, move or modified to fit whatever opportunity arises. So that's so real. It's a very fluid thing, and we'll get into that today. Use it to apply to student orgs at Northwestern for an internship application 2 weeks ago from UT Austin. Yeah, scholarships. So there's a lot of opportunities for using the resume, and that differentiates the audience and the need and the reason why. So it's a really awesome document that you're going to be using for a long time. Amazing. So cool, great rounds of quick introductions, and I want us to jump into our main feature tonight. So I am excited to introduce Heather Golden, like I said, the Career Services Director, Director of Career Services at the Cleveland Institute of Art, which happens to be my alma mater. So I'm so excited to have Heather here today. When I was in school, Heather was a really valuable person in my college experience and helped me with all of my resume woes and questions. So ask your questions, please, throughout this presentation. As Heather's presenting, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And Heather, you can respond to them throughout if it happens, or we can wait till the end. But without further ado, Heather.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ross. So I'm going to share my screen now. So Ross, if any questions do come up in the chat and I happen to just miss them, please interrupt me and share them with me. Awesome. All right. So let's share this presentation. You all will have access to this presentation in the Google Doc that Ross has shared with you. So, if you like to access this later, It is there for you. So just a thumbs up if you can see the presentation. Awesome. Okay. Wonderful. So just a quick little bit about me. My background has most of my career has been helping students find their dream jobs and find the way to get there through using the tools in their toolkit, whether that be their resume, their cover letter, their interviewing skills, their network. So I have spent over 10 years dedicated to this. Before that, though, I did work in the design world. So I do have quite an affinity to Design for America, design thinking principles, and I currently still use them in my job, making the work that I do student-centered. What we'll go over today is what employers want. It really helps to start from that framework, thinking about your user. Who's going to be reading this document? What are they looking for? We'll review some resume basics and really good tips that will help you stand out. Then we'll pause to start reflecting on our own experiences with DFA. This will help us really think about how we can add DFA to our resume, or how we can even enhance the things that we are currently articulating about DFA on there now. And then lastly, as Ross has shared, we're going to have 2 breakout rooms where you all will work together in small groups and really help to flesh out some awesome bullet points for DFA to describe it on your resume. And this is great because you can borrow, you can be influenced by, when we put this list together, it's going to be really helpful for everyone. So starting out, every year, the National Association of Colleges and Employers does a survey to over thousands of employers, where they ask employers to rank what are the top skills that they want in their interns and their new hires. So every year, this list comes out. And this is our most recent list. Typically, these things remain the same. These are sort of the top 8, but sometimes the order shifts a little bit. So this is the most recent order of the skills that employers want. It's really interesting to see at the top is problem solving, because wouldn't you argue that your work in DFA is all about problem solving? Below that, verbal and written communication, also something you are probably very well versed in with your involvement in DFA. Teamwork, collaboration. Without the sake of repeating myself, you know what I'm going to say. It's a DFA skill, right? Digital technology, what we're doing right now. You all are so skilled in digital technology that it's such an asset to your future employer. Leadership is huge. Companies want to hire people who are going to be the future leaders and take on big challenges. Professionalism and work ethic, also hugely important. Career management. So that kind of deals with, being reflective on where you see yourself, how you see yourself advance, how you work with others within an organization to help make sure that you're meeting your career goals. And then also global and intercultural fluency, having that ability to relate to and empathize with folks from different backgrounds, and to be able to be culturally competent in the workplace. So you can argue that if not all 8, at least 4, right, are things that you all are gaining in DFA and your participation. So goals of a resume. So this is really starting out at the, airplane level, 40,000 feet view of what a resume should accomplish. Really, you want this document to give employers a potential sense of who you are. This is often your first point that they're going to come in contact with, that they're going to get to know you. So we want to make sure it gives them a great sense of you and all of your talents. But we need it to be easily skimmed, because employers typically spend about 4 to 8 seconds looking at resumes. So knowing how to make yourself stand out in that 4-second skim is going to be really important. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. You typically want your resume to be 1 page when you're a college student or a recent grad. There are absolutely some exceptions. There are some fields, like education, for example, that it's normal to have more than a 1-page resume. So, if you're in one of those fields where that is acceptable, totally fine. That is just sort of it's not a hard rule. You really want to make clear what you offer the company. really shine, this is the time to show off, right? To be humble about it, but to show off. And then lastly, the goal of the resume is to really get you that foot in the door for the interview. One of the most common questions I get with students when I'm talking to them is how they should order their resume. And while this is general advice, and there are exceptions to this rule, this is kind of a typical, types of categories you might see on your resume and how you might order them. If you have different categories or different order, do not stress. Again, this is just a guideline. And a lot of times folks just starting out, I go over this. For most of you on this call, it seems like you're already using your resume quite frequently. So there's really not that much of a need to go over that too much. One thing I do want to point out though, is make sure that you have all of your relevant contact information on your resume. So part of my job is I review about 400 resumes a year, easily, could even be more. But I find at least out of the 400 I review, at least 10 don't have a phone number and an email or one or the other. So it's a very small percentage, but it happens enough where I notice it. So you just really want to make sure that you have that name, contact information on there so the employer can contact you. Education, experience. You can also split your experience by relevant and additional. So for example, I was a design major when I was in undergrad. So I might put design experience where I'd list my internships, and then additional experience where I would list my retail experience and other things I did in college. That helps to make sure that your most relevant information is more towards the top. You can also include your involvement in leadership, which we really hope you do. And you may call that something campus involvement, leadership experience. Folks call it a ton of different things, but as long as you have that, again, this is why we're thinking about this, to put DFA on our resume. And also your skills. Skills are extremely important when it comes to applying to jobs at large companies where they're using computer software to track applicants and to screen out applicants before the resume even gets to a human. So, if you're applying for a computer science internship and you see a certain type of programming language on there, you want to make sure you have that listed in your skills, right? If you know it, because the computer that's going to scan your resume is going to try to match how many words from the job description does the applicant have on their resume. So skills is one of those great ways to help increase your score on the applicant tracking system. All right. Any questions so far about that, folks? Okay, good. And again, please, ask away anytime. I am glad to answer. Those were some basic things, but diving in, you want your resume to tell a story. And you want it to be interesting to the reader. You want it to capture their attention. And there's so many ways to do that. The first one is don't put everything on there. Really try to curate your resume to have the most salient and relevant tasks possible. Now, you might be applying, to, graduate school to go and get a master's degree in whatever you're studying now. And you might think to yourself, well, working at Subway really doesn't seem applicable to, the master's degree I want to go into. But in actuality, we can always take the experiences that you've done and tell them as a story in a way that highlights the transferable skills for your industry. So at a previous college I worked at, I was working with a student who wanted to become a lawyer, right? So we thought about what are some of the key things that a lawyer will be doing? And what are some of the things that they did at Subway? And so, communication, delegating tasks, helping resolve issues, right? So there were still things, even though they weren't necessarily the actual act of putting a sandwich together in a timely manner. There were things that were relevant to the goal that student had. So we don't want everything, but we want it to be curated and tell that story. It does help, though, to keep a master list. So I have multiple career paths. I am a career services person, but I'm also an educator. I also love teaching. It's my passion and I love doing that. The resume that I use for career services jobs is very different from the resume that I use for teaching. So it really helps me to keep a master list of everything I've ever done. And when I'm getting ready to apply to a new teaching job, I copy and paste things over so that the resume that goes for the teaching job is very curated to teaching. So I hope that makes sense. Um, Always have your most relevant information at that top half of your resume, above the fold, one might say, if you folded your resume in half, making sure that the most important things are above the fold. So you want to have the things that will get you noticed, those relevant experiences, maybe even listing the most relevant skills. You want those most important things at the top half. Use reverse chronological order. There are exceptions to this rule. There are different types of resumes, but most commonly for college students and recent grads, reverse chronological order makes the most sense. That is what recruiters are used to seeing for their target demographic. It's what their mind is expecting when they're skimming a resume. So if you gave them something a little bit different, it might confuse them. And we do not want to confuse while we're telling our story. So use that reverse chronological order where you have your most recent activities and experiences first, and you go backwards in time. And then, how can we get all of your greatness on one page? It's impossible, right? So consider an online supplement. So maybe if you're in a more visual major, or for example, like you're wanting to put like some of your DFA projects online, you can send a portfolio. Or you can send your LinkedIn link. So, consider adding one of these online supplements into the header of your resume. It's a nice way to get recruiters who want to know more to get to see a little bit more of who you are. Formatting on your resume is extremely important. One of the biggest things is you want to keep it simple and clear. You want it to be able to be, again, easily skimmed in 4 seconds. So that's why sometimes it's really fun to Google like unique resumes. Like okay, maybe it's fun to me because I'm kind of like a nerd about this stuff, but it is kind of fun. If you're ever bored, Google like unique resumes. And you'll see there are some really avant-garde and creative things that people have done. But for the most part, you really do garner success by keeping it simple, keeping it easy, keeping the format clean, all the information clear, and not over designing it. So that is just something to keep in mind with formatting. You want to carefully stand out. So again, you don't want to go, to one extreme to, completely bells and whistles and very over designed, but you do want something to stand out. And that can be in your content, in how you've made color choices, if you're using some fun color choices to have pops of color on there, but you don't want to go overboard. You want to make that contact info prominent. So, this isn't the time to just hide it in a size 7 font at the bottom of the page. No, no, no. We want it to be easily accessible. So when the recruiter is looking at your resume and they're saying, okay, how do I call this person? How do I get in touch with them? They have your information right then and there. Design for skimmability. So use a lot of negative space. We don't want all text just like really tightly on a page, just text, 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 text. We want a nice balance between like spacing in text. So, that really does help your resume be skimmable. And the best test for skimmability is to ask your roommate or a trusted friend, hey, read my resume for 4 seconds. Grab it back from them. What do you remember? And hearing them share back what they remember from what they saw. Choose a strong layout. So sometimes, I've seen folks who are really great designers selling resume templates for like $5 on Etsy. Or maybe you have a friend who's a graphic design major who you can make dinner for. But sometimes it doesn't hurt to get a professional's insight or to use something professional. You do not have to, by no means, but it is something that does help to have your layout not just look like the standard template that's in Microsoft Word or Google Docs. Experience is always the hardest part of what you're putting on your resume. It's really taking the time to reflect and make sure that you're getting across what it is that you know how to do. The best advice is to keep it recent and keep it relevant. you really don't want something that you did back when you were in grammar school on your resume, unless it was like extremely amazing, like you won a gold medal or something in the Olympics. And yeah, that can stay on there, right? But we want to, for the most part, we want to keep things recent and keep them related to the job we're applying for. You always want to focus on transferable skills. As I was sharing before with that example of like working at Subway, communication, problem solving, conflict resolution, right? There are bigger things that you learn at your part-time jobs than just, doing the actual tasks that you're paid for. So we really want you to focus on those transferable skills. And DFA has so many wonderful transferable skills. Curate your bullet points. So this is what I shared with you a little bit before. Like I said, when I apply for a teaching job, I am going to say things about my current position, like gives presentations, plans lessons. So I'm going to focus on talking about my position as a career director in that way, where if I was applying for a career center job, I would say things like, analyzes data of graduation results. So how you talk about your job, depending on what you're applying to, may be slightly different. Don't use too much industry terminology, also known as jargon, because your resume has to go through HR first. So one of the big things that you can do to help with this. So if you're in a really specialized major, engineering, or when I worked at Bowling Green State University, there was this major called photochemical science. And I had no idea what I was looking at sometimes when I looked at these folks' resumes. I mean, I knew they were doing impressive research in a lab, but I didn't know more than that. And so I would tell them, like, we need to rewrite these bullet points because you need the HR person, AKA like the layman like me, who doesn't necessarily know all of what you're doing to understand your resume. And so a lot of times, that would be through talking with the student, having them explain to me. I could help them put it into terminology that an HR person or the average person could understand. So you can use terms of your industry, absolutely, but you don't want it to be too much where the recruiter would have no idea what you're doing, because usually the recruiter is the gatekeeper and from the hiring manager. Give them the numbers. So show off what you have done. I was just reviewing a resume maybe an hour or two ago before this presentation, and a student had done some fundraising where she helped raise over $10,000 for charity. Like, that's awesome. That definitely stands out, right? Versus if she just said, I've raised money for charity through dance marathon. She gave the number. She showed what she did. So that's a really impressive way to get your resume noticed and to show off some of the great things you've done, is to quantify. Show that you get stuff done. Show that you are a doer. So using a lot of action verbs, managed, oversaw, communicated, collaborated, partnered. Use action verbs that show you are someone who gets stuff done. Show, don't tell your soft skills. So I was meeting with a recruiter. Part of my job is so great. I get to go out for coffee and have lunches with recruiters and kind of just pick their brains about what college students should be thinking about when they're applying for jobs and internships. And, me and this recruiter were talking, and she's like, I hate it when they just put in their skills, like personal skills, like hard worker, and they don't back it up. Like, I'd rather see them say, like, I worked at Subway and I worked 2 double shifts at least twice a week. Like, I'd rather have them give me the example of how they are a hard worker versus just saying I'm a hard worker on their resume. So, when you have opportunities, make sure if you do have any soft skills, instead of putting them just in the skills section, actually list them out and give the details in your experience section. Don't neglect your non-traditional work. Make sure you're putting your things that didn't necessarily relate to your major. A lot of times, I've worked with students and I'm like, yeah, it was just a landscaping job, or, oh, it was just working, retail. There are so many good transferable skills from those experiences. Make sure to mix up your word choice. The worst thing that I see when I'm looking at resumes is seeing the same verb repeated over and over and over again without any variation. And so, created the website, created the social media campaign, created the, insert whatever here. So we want to mix and match. So, created, developed, implemented, right? So don't just use the same word over and over again. Find vary your verbs. Use keywords when you can, because again, if you're applying through to a large company that uses an applicant tracking system, that is a computer and an algorithm just trying to see if you're a good fit for the job. So using some keywords when applying to large companies, like if you were going to apply to Disney or to Sony, right? Like huge companies, they get thousands of resumes for these internships and jobs. So use keywords. And avoid vague terms. It's just, if something isn't clear, like you want to make sure that you rewrite it until it's clear. That's really the best advice. So again, having someone read your resume and kind of say like, is anything not clear to you? And have them go through it. And if they feel something is vague, we want to reword it until it's clear. Skills, awards, and interests. So definitely skills, you can just list out your skills on your resume, your technology skills. Maybe there's a second language or third language that you speak. List out those language skills, right? List out your technical skills, your industry skills. You want to list those skills out. It helps to organize them. So for example, I'm going to list my computer systems together, my databases together, my design software together, my, list things similarly together near each other on your resume. It just helps to create sense of order and organization. This is like really interesting, not pun intended, but for interest on your resume. I don't recommend it, and I'll tell you why. About 6 or 7 years ago, I got to go and visit Viacom, the huge media company in New York. They were having a day for college career counselors to come and meet their hiring managers and learn about how people get hired at, MTV, BET. They own Nickelodeon, right? They own so many different television stations. So there was a panel, and one of the recruiters said, I hate interest on resume. If someone has interest on resume, I throw it away immediately. Then sitting next to her was another recruiter, and he said, actually, I love interest on resume. I only hire people if they have their interest on resume. Do you know, a certain type of cool fitness activity, or do you play video games? I want to know who you are. I hire people based on the whole person. And so, you had two people, same company, different departments though, I'll tell you what departments they worked for after, who both strongly felt that interest should or should not be on your resume. And so use discretion, just because we know that both of them are out there. Both of those people exist. The person who hated the interest worked for a more conservative department, marketing, legal, like a more conservative in terms of the work that they did in the day-to-day, where the person who wanted interest was a video game designer for Nickelodeon. So very fun, hip. You probably spend a lot of hours at work, so you want to know what people are like because you're going to spend a lot of time with them. So I just put that out there. Use your discretion if you do list interest on your resume. Okay, getting near the finishing touches of the general resume talk. You don't have to say references available upon request, because that's a given that if you want this internship and we want your references, you're going to give them to us. Proofread. Definitely, you proofread as much as you can. One time I was working with a client and they gave me their resume and they're like, here, proofread this. And I was like, gladly. And they had on there that they were trying to say that they did some assessment work. So they said assessed, or assess, because it was present tense, assessed client needs, but they didn't have the word assessed. They had a curse word on there instead, and Microsoft Word didn't pick it up because it is a word, right? So we don't want that to be you. We want your resumes to be proofread, and the best place to get them proofread, your career center. A lot of career centers are doing things through email these days, so you don't even have to go in, but definitely get at least someone, roommate, friend, mentor, proofread that resume. Helps to save it as a PDF, not a requirement, but just it does help, especially if you, have words on your resume that there's the red squiggly line because Word thinks you've spelled them wrong, but actually just you worked for a company that had like a really fun name. So, saving it as a PDF gets rid of that. Name your file, with some with saving the recruiter time in mind. So, resume, first name, last name is like a great way to save your document. So resume, Heather Golden, or Heather Golden resume. That's a really great way to save it because the hiring managers are going to put your resume into a folder. If you just call it resume, they're going to have to rename it. You're saving them a couple seconds. They'll appreciate it. And constantly refresh your document. You should be revisiting your resume at least once a semester, if not once a semester, once a year, but you really want to constantly refresh it so you don't forget some of the things that you've done. Okay, before I go on to the next portion, which is talking about reflection, any questions? Okay, cool. All right, so the reason why I focus so much on reflection is this is the best way to really think about what you've done in an experience. What have you learned and how can you articulate it to an employer so they will know how valuable you are as a future hire? So I'm going to give you an example before we dive into DFA, just so you can kind of get the gist of how to do this, right? I'm going to use an example that hopefully most of you are familiar with, a summer camp, right? So let's pretend I worked at a summer camp. And when I start to reflect on how I want to write about my experience on my resume, my first thing I write down just like, what are the things I did? So I watched out for the campers, made sure no one got hurt, right? Made sure they had a good time. It was important that everyone was upbeat. I made sure that they did their chores. They cleaned because this was an overnight camp and, we need to keep things clean. We don't want any bugs. I'd let my boss know if I had any concerns, during my daily activity logs. And when it rained, I came up with activities so that the kids would have something to do because otherwise they'd be bored. Right? So that's my initial reflection, right? My time working at a summer camp. So that is not ready for a resume. It gives a picture of what I did, but it's not ready yet. So to reword it into resume ready format, I want to start every section off with an action verb. And why we do this is so that when a recruiter is skimming it, they're going to see lots of strong action verbs. Again, they might not read the whole resume, but if they see things like communicated with a team, developed activities, spontaneously, they're going to know a little bit about how I'm creative, how I'm a good communicator, and those are the things I'm going to also bring to their company. Hiring managers really look at what you've done in the past because it will predict your future successes at their company. Or at least that's what psychology and the folks who have gotten involved to studying hiring would tell you. So, always start out with an action verb. Do not use like I, just go for the action verb, remove the I. You want to quantify where possible. So again, we can throw numbers in, the number of children that I supervised, or the number of activities we did in a day, the number of chores on the chore chart. Like there could be a variety of numbers that I'm able to put into my resume. And lastly, you want to make sure your bullet points answer the question, so what? So it's not just going to be, communicated to a group of 12 when talking about maybe my DFA experience. You want to say communicated with a group of 12 to help explain a complex problem to a group of participants, users, right? Or something like that, sorry. It's a little late, so my examples are not as good as they would have been at fresh when my coffee was fresh this morning. But we always want to make sure we're answering, why is this important? So what, or why is this important? We want to make sure we give full detail and we follow through. Action verbs really do help that reader get the idea of what you can do. So right now in the chat, I'd love for you all to type in some of the action verbs that you use on your resume. And Ross, if you would read some of them just to, again, because I can't see the chat. So what are some of the action verbs you have on your resumes? If you have them in another tab, take a peek, get maybe two examples, or if you can even just remember. I'd love to hear what some of the action verbs you're using are.
If I unmute myself, my voice works.
Yes.
Managed, collaborated, created. All great, yes. The collaboration is one that resonates with me as a DFAer as well. That's a skill that you'll use for everything that you do with other people. We have ideated, participated, and developed. The development's always really interesting because I think it frames your activity in a way that you can really show which portion of that thing that was developed you worked on, which is a really nice way to do that. Let's see here. And then Kayla, or if you want to throw in one too, then we can not to throw you on the spot, but if you can think of one or two.
I don't have much of a resume at the moment because so I don't have that yet. But
no worries, sorry to throw you on the spot.
And I'm glad that you came here tonight then, being in that position where you are just starting out, because, this document is so important, as we were, Ross was sharing earlier. You're going to use it for the rest of your life. So even though you're just starting out, I'm so glad that you came today. Another great place to find action verbs is actually to look at the job description you're applying to. Like, I love analyzing a job description before I apply. I'm a little old school in terms of I print things out. I do recycle them after, but I print things out. My brain works better and processes better when I have paper. But I know my students, I teach them the same activity and I tell them just open it in a PDF and highlight. So I look through that job description. I'm like, what words are appearing often? What seems like the most important skills they're looking for? I really analyze that. And then I make sure I have clearly communicated that in my resume. So that job description can not only help you find keywords to help you get through the applicant tracking system, but it might also help you find action verbs that really help you describe what you're doing. Okay, so, with this summer camp example, oops, I just have to move the little Zoom people. Okay, cool. So I watched for my campers. So when I, really reflected on an action verb for that, supervised came to mind. So supervised, I was able to throw in some numbers, the number of campers, the number of hours a day, and for how long the camp was. So supervised a cabin of 15 campers, 24 hours a day for 6 weeks. Lots of quantifying in there, lots of numbers. So making sure people had, a good time. Perform daily duties as assigned with enthusiasm and a positive attitude. Made sure that the campers did their chores. Maintained a safe and healthy living environment for campers. Let people know when things went wrong. Recorded activities and concerns in a daily log shared with supervisors to better address issues collaboratively. Pivoted when I needed to come up with activities for when it rained. Remained flexible in the face of challenge and created valuable bonding experiences for campers. So, by starting out and just reflecting on these very, quintessential, like, what did you do? You can then work through, find the action verb that works the best for that. Think about numbers if there were any. There's not always, as you can see, only my first example has numbers. And then why was it important? So, that really is a guideline in how you can think about writing these. You're not always going to have like the exact why is this important. Sometimes it's just, what you do. I think I was working with a student who was a lifeguard and we talked about like, we talked about something that we couldn't figure out the why it was important, but it was something that they did and that was still very important. You could tell based off of what it was. So you might not always have exactly written out why it was important, but you're focusing in on transferable skills and the value that you can add to the new community. Okay, so now we're going to reflect on DFA. So type into the chat some of those initial thoughts of the things you have done with DFA, how DFA has taught you some skills or how it allows you to shine. Just type into the chat, maybe a sentence. And you can use I. Don't feel like it has to be in resume bullet point form just yet. I just want to know some of the cool things that you all have been doing with DFA. And again, Ross, if you would so graciously read those for me, I would greatly appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, if you want to type them or if you just want to, feel free to unmute yourself. I
Yeah,
think.
you can unmute yourself. Absolutely.
Whatever is faster for you. Just jump in here. I know for me, like DFA was helpful because I was able to meet people like the dual studio of Case Western Reserve CIA. So I got to meet Case Western students and other majors that I might not have made before. And yeah, I think Hilla, it's similar in that you were able to make new friends in the design community, which is a really powerful experience with DFA.
Community building is a huge skill that you'll need to bring into the workforce too, right? We can't exist in a bubble. You have to make friends with IT, you have to make friends with marketing, or you have to make friends with everybody, right? So absolutely those collegial relationship building skills are going to be nice. Absolutely. Any other thoughts?
Jackie said, like, learning to find different ways to communicate and finding times to schedule meetings. Oh my God.
Yes. Yes. So important in the work world. Yeah, Ross and I are both fans of our online booking calendars and all this technology that we use and that's awesome.
Oh, and then Kayla, you were able to travel to another university to work with their team designing a website and to do research in the community, which is such an awesome, like, quintessential DFA experience of being able to really engage with your community.
Absolutely. Well, those were some really great examples. If anyone else want to do a last share before we kind of move on to, I think, yep. Okay, I have some examples. Anyone else want to share?
I think,
Oh,
yeah. No, go ahead. I was just thinking about like the projects too that you've done. I'd love to know like a little bit more around like what were the general how can we's that you were working on, or any of the problem spaces you've worked on in the past too, which is just for the next activity. It's kind of foreshadowing, but just
yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say too. Yep. So here are some examples, right? And I am so lucky that I got to work with Ross so closely when Ross was a student at CIA, because I got to know about DFA just through hearing about Ross talk about it. And I got to go to the showcase, the end of the year presentations at the Case Western and CIA chapter. So it was really cool because I did get a good feel of what y'all are doing and how amazing this work is. So here's an example. Not so good way to talk about, ideation might be like, come up with a lot of ideas to solve these big gravity problems or wicked problems. Okay, it's not terrible, right? Like, I kind of get what you're saying. Let's get a little more specific, right? You break that down. Use design thinking to create and implement solutions to real world problems. A little bit more specific. But we can take that a step further. Brainstormed idea with 3 team members using design thinking techniques to resolve complex challenges such as childhood obesity while using social innovation. So that really takes it a step further to provide some clarity on what you were doing. Presentations. So, presented DFA project at the end of the year. Or I know some of you may be presenting yours this week. I heard, or last week. But this, right? Like, so that's just your most basic, not, horrible, but not great. Could be better. Created a poster and discussed project details to an audience. Okay, we're getting a little bit better. We're kind of making that more clear. Developed a poster, prototype, and pitch to share a project for Pizza Box Recycling Program at end of year showcase. Much more clearer. It actually gives the details of the project, gives a little bit of an idea of the audience and the user, and so it really creates a clearer picture. Teamwork. Did a group project with 3 people. All right, we can do better. Collaborated with 3 people to decide who does certain parts of the project. All right, a little bit better. Served as a leader by delegating tasks, following up, and supporting team members to meet their deadlines. Very clear. Organization. Plan the research study with users. Not really sure 100% what you're doing with that. Organized a user research study with 6 users. Okay, a little bit more clear. Design the research protocol and organized a user research session with 6 participants to gain insight into their lived experiences. Much more clear. So does this make sense? How like you might start your reflection with planned a research study with users because that's what you did. But then you go to your action verbs, you try to find really strong action verbs, you try to find ways you can throw in numbers, and then you really try to expand on why is this important and how is this going to show my future employer the skills that I truly gained. So that's sort of a little bit of the process. And like everyone's process is different, but this is just like a nice potential process to help you through writing your experiences down. And again, I mentioned before, use the job description. And so an example here is an IBM design research co-op. And, I just wanted to show this, and this is an actual job. The link is in the presentation if you're interested. Sound like a cool internship. But, we can see in the job description that they're looking for someone who has excellent collaboration skills and persistent curiosity. Well, you might want to make sure that in your resume, you are highlighting on all of the jobs you've done, whether it was working at Subway or your DFA experience, the times you collaborated. Same thing with delivering compelling stories to communicate. We can tell communication is important. You want to make sure you're highlighting it. So I hope that makes sense how I use the job description to kind of help me think about the words and the way I want to curate my resume. I saw a little flash in the corner. Did someone type something in the chat, Ross?
Oh, I just put the co-op in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. All right. So now we're going to get to the breakout rooms where we're going to have you all, work on some actual bullet points for examples. So what I'd want you to do to kind of start out, you might need a few seconds before we send you off into breakout rooms, is to have an example ready that you want to talk to your breakout group about. So you can write it down if you have a notebook. If you don't, open up a Google Doc, a Microsoft Word page, and write out an example of an experience that you have with DFA as a bullet point. And this is your working, you can actually type it into we haven't put you in breakout groups yet, so you can't yet. But I want you to think about what that bullet point might look like. And then what you'll do is you'll meet in the breakout room where you'll share it with your teammates, and you'll help to work to make it better together. You'll give feedback. You'll, if the action verb isn't strong enough, what could be better? Is it clear? You'll work on editing the points together and then putting them into the Google Doc that we have shared. So hopefully by the, by the end of that, we could, we only have 3 folks left. I guess folks had to leave. Yeah. So Russ, do we want to just do this as a...
Yeah, I think we can do it as a group. And I was editing the document in real time. So if you go to the activity portion, I don't think we need to do breakout groups. I think we can do this. And for this first activity, under each of your names, just list out either your current bullet points or current things that you're doing in DFA, and we'll spend about a quick time box activity of 3 minutes. Just put as many as you can, and then we'll work together to create one strong bullet point for each person on the call here that you can leave with today. I think, for the next 3 minutes, just jot something down. Try to get 3, 1 per minute at least, of like expansive brain dump of things you're doing at DFA. If you want something tangentially related to DFA, I challenge you to do everything DFA related for this activity. You can bring this to other work at another time. But try to make a list. If you can get 5 by 5:55 Central, that would be so many 5s and wonderful for all 5 of us on the call. So keep going. And I want to just say to the act of thinking through this, like you're doing, and just doing that brain dump and recognizing the work that you're doing, even the things that you think aren't resume worthy, or you're like, that can't be a transferable skill, but try to think of those things, whether it's, you know, the project you're on itself, or something you're doing with the greater studio, something you're doing with your community partner, something that you prototyped. There's a lot of different activities that you can start with and create a foundation. So it's worth in this ideation session to come up, be as prolific as possible. And I also want to make a case for getting in the habit of doing this activity throughout the project, and not just the end. So there's an initiative that I've been focusing on at DFA is around project documentation. And if you're a team lead, that's, maybe you're familiar with it, but it's an opportunity for all of the people in the DFA network to record their project and take this moment of reflection. So we encourage a lot of retrospectives at DFA, which is just a check-in. And this is an activity that we encourage everyone to be doing like monthly, honestly, because the project work can change from month to month. So getting in this regular habit of documentation is only helping you in the future in creating that master list of resume bullet points so that you know what you've been doing. It's much easier to remember what you're doing in the middle of it rather than like trying to remember at the end of your project, like, wait, what did I do? So that's my tangent related, and I'm happy you're typing over me. I hope I was not that distracting, but you were like osmosis taking it in or something. So I think we're good for this, just so we can get to the excellent bullet points and really transform these. Yeah, keep going. You can come back to this a few minutes after this activity. But I think we can have, if you want to unmute yourself, Jackie, if you want to read one of those, and then Kyla and Hilla, everyone just read your favorite one that you want to focus in transforming for the next part of this activity. So Jackie, which one are you going to rewrite in the next portion? Oh no, I don't have any audio coming out. Oh, do you want to just bold it for us in the document?
What about now?
Yes, now.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I was saying I was in the middle of typing one right now. My bad.
No, you're good. Which one of the two do you want to use?
So I kind of like the first one only because it's a lot more detailed,
Cool.
but the second one is equally as important. But the first one I was saying was utilizing design thinking in order to develop ways to revitalize the empty pedestals in UT Austin's South Mall, which was the project that I worked on this semester.
Okay, that's awesome. Can you tell me what a pedestal is?
No, my apologies. I think I left out like the most important part, but my project focused on in 2015 to 17, UT removed Confederate soldier statues. Yeah, so maybe it'd be good to clarify that in there, but and then they just left the pedestals empty.
And the mall is an outside area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because again, just like my East Coast mind thinks of a mall as a place where you go to shop. So that was what I initially thought. So I think if you definitely said like empty statue pedestal, or so, I think that would help, because then I'd be like, oh, a mall, like the mall in DC outside. Mm-hmm. I think it just needs a little something there for clarity. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
This is such a cool project though.
Heather, they're presenting at the expo on Friday if you're available on Friday from 10 to 12 Central for a little bit.
Send me the link. I have something for staff week, but it might work out with the time zone change. So absolutely, I would love to see that.
Kayla, which one are you focusing on?
So the main thing I worked on this semester was my second bullet point, which is kind of what I was talking about before, which is we partnered with Project Blue Jay to help build a website to help rural students learn about opportunities after high school.
Yes.
That's kind of the one I wanted to focus on.
That's really awesome. So let's see. I mean, the opportunities after high school, what were they? Just kind of curious. Was it like work or join the military? Like, what were the options that were available?
So it was kind of about like showing that there are multiple options so that they can do military or trades or what universities are available, stuff kind of like that.
Oh, very cool. So, you know what I might just add is the word variety, like to learn about the variety of opportunities after high school, to show that the organization was showing multiple paths. But yeah, that's really awesome.
And then Hilla?
Um, I
Like your
think
breakdown.
I'd want to like work on my first bullet point. I feel like there could just be something like added to it to maybe make it a little bit more specific, or I'm not sure.
What was the outcome? What were you trying to develop, with the usability testing sessions, or what were you trying to create?
So from the usability testing sessions, what we wanted was to get a lot of like feedback and see if people are actually interested, and like, is our prototype working? Like, is this like an actual, do they understand what our event is that we created and stuff like that?
To understand the effectiveness of the prototype could be the missing piece there.
Yeah, desirability, feasibility of prototype
Mm-hmm.
are definitely goals of testing, are areas that we've used before. Amazing. So I recognize we're at 6, but if you want to copy that one statement and bring it down below to your name, you wordsmith it in the remainder of this for a few minutes to see if you can get it. And Heather, can you remind me, it's the action verb, like quantifying, and then
and why it's important. Yeah. Or why we should care about it. And so, like sometimes that's even adding, just like we did with the last example, to do what, right? So we led these usability sessions and we conducted this analysis. Why was that important? So that is a great example of how to add sometimes a little bit of detail to the end, just to, again, make sure your point is really clear. But you all are amazing, and it sounds like you're doing some really cool work. And even though I might have asked you some questions to just critique the bullet point, it was only to really help make your bullet point stronger. It was by no means, shape, or form a critique on the amazing work that you all are doing.
Cool. So feel free to keep writing. I'll be on here for a few more minutes if you want to hop on or keep talking through, and we can finalize so you get one really stellar one. And now that you have that formula, feel free to keep applying. There are a few other announcements I did want to make that I missed in the beginning because I jumped into Heather's presentation because I was so excited. But we have our final Fall Spark series on Wednesday at 1 p.m. featuring Udornas Yol on why voting isn't enough. So if you ever felt like, civic engagement, or what like things should happen more than just an election year, we're going to talk about that this Wednesday, so hop on there. There's a registration link under the agenda. And lastly, if you're interested, our spring 2021 national project is a project with Unilever, which I highly encourage everyone to apply to. The interest form is here. More information about that's coming soon. It's actually a project with 2 DFA alumni who are from the Rensselaer DFA studio who now work at Unilever and are bringing DFA to their organization there. And this is about project refills. So packaging, refills, and really thinking about the future of the circular economy and how we can encourage people to start adopting that type of behavior to save our planet. So if you're interested in applying, more information, fill out that interest form and you'll receive the application instructions once they're available in the coming weeks. And that application won't be due until the end of January. So you have a whole month to do research and apply if you're interested in pursuing that opportunity. Because then you could put it on your resume.
Yes. And I mean, Unilever, like that's like huge, like, oh my gosh, wow. And to work with that kind of project, that's so cool. That's so cool. Do any of you have any questions? I know, if anything popped up since we did that activity, or if anything was flowing through your mind.
I guess I was thinking about like projects on your resume. I'm working on a portfolio right now, but I also did put some of my projects on my resume. Is that like okay?
Yeah, it's your relevant experience, right? So what are you majoring in? What are you studying?
Design and interaction.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yeah. So, I would even have like, my design and interaction experience or relevant experience, right? And have those projects be the first few things that an employer sees. That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. You want those projects on there. And that's why I tried to say too, like, this isn't everyone's situation is a little different. So, but no, that's perfect. Other questions? All right. Well, it has been so delightful to meet you all tonight and to spend some time with you. I know it is a busy time of year for college students, so thank you for taking this hour out of your day to spend it with us. So thank you.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate it, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in 2021, as well as the rest of this week on all these expos that are happening. So keep it up. Looking forward to seeing you next year. If you're interested, the next week, tomorrow's group call is featuring an alumni panel as well, so you can talk to recent alumni about what they've been doing after college and how they use their resumes to get to where they are. So if you would like to register for that, I'll put the link also up in there for you to hop into. But thank you again so much for being here. You guys are amazing, and have a great rest of your night. Thank you so much, Heather. Can I get a round of applause? And a quick thank you to Heather for taking the time to be with us as well. We love your insights and all of the things you're doing to help all of us achieve our goals in our careers and beyond.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Have a fantastic night, everyone. Bye.
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 Thank you.
you.